Welcome to Pod Junction, where business meets podcasting. Whether you're on a morning jog, driving to work, whipping up a meal, or just simply taking a minute for yourself, our weekly bite-sized episodes promise fresh insights from successful podcasters who have cracked the code of using podcasts to grow their business. So whether you're a podcasting newbie or a seasoned podcaster, this episode is for you. Well, hello and welcome to Pod Junction Podcast. This is Sadaf, your host, and with me is a man who needs no introduction.
I don't know about
Matt
that.
Edmundson himself.
I don't know about that. My parole officer tells me I need an introduction everywhere I go.
Yeah, so we are a show all about...
I don't really have a parole officer, by the way.
Well, I was just going to let that one slide.
Yeah, okay.
Let them believe what they want.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, we're a show all about helping podcasters use their podcast for growing their business.
Exactly. That's very good. That's very well said.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. And today we have a segment from Eagan Heath again, because Matt doesn't know this information, so I have to fill it in.
I just turn up and smile. I don't even turn up like pretty these days. I just turn up and smile.
He's got too much competition now.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah.
Guess what?
I feel like you've got something to say, Matt.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. I'm enjoying the fact you're now introducing the show. So, you know, it's good. I will say, actually, a warm welcome to you if this is your first time with Pod Junction. It's great, new growing audience all the time. So, yeah, you know. And, of course, if you're a regular, welcome back. Always great to hear from you as well. Let us know what you think about the show, especially now Sadaf has started introducing it. How's she doing? Critique her a little bit. I think that would be fun.
Just be kind. Critique me with kindness.
Critique with kindness. I think they'll be kind to you. It's more like, who's that fella you've got sat next to you? Just get rid of him. The show will be much better without him.
No, I need him. All right. So Eagan Heath.
Yes.
Again. And he is going to be talking about the main challenges that he's faced with podcast production in particular.
Oh, okay. We're getting into the whole production side today.
Yes, we are.
Dun, dun, dun. So I've really no need to be here because I haven't got a clue.
Maybe you'll learn something.
Maybe I will. Maybe I will. All right. So, yeah. So are we just going to roll VT?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here it is.
What have you found to be the biggest hurdles or challenges that you have come across?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people sort of anticipate it's the finding guests, and that's not the hard part at all.
Yeah,
I would say for me, it's really been the production piece of I'm great. I can show up and riff with people and create an episode and ask them questions and learn more and make connections. That's kind of the part that at least with my skills or just how I am like that's the part I'm good at. And when it was just me or when I was trying to get new assistants on. It was really the editing and the production piece of we got to the point where I'm sure we were more than 50 episodes behind. And it was almost absurd where I guess we're kind of reaching out, hey, when's my episode coming out? And we kind of had to say, hey, stop asking. Like I'm running an agency and I'm doing the best I can here. Yeah. And I interestingly, I mentioned this in my email. So I would send out to my list when we have a new episode come out. And I would say, hey, sorry, it's been a while. Like I'm busy running an agency and we're kind of got to be a mini media company here too.
Yeah.
And someone who had been on the podcast said, hey, here's my assistant. You should talk with her. She's great. She helps me on my podcast. And that was really the game changer for us. So I went through, I think we had 2 other VA companies before that and just did not work out.
Okay.
It really is this series of steps of, can we edit the episode? Can we create show notes and timestamps and, things to promote it? And so between my now third assistant, Miriam, who had already had experience doing podcast production promotion and AI tools, we've really sped that process up. But boy, it sure took a long time. And so we got to the point with her where we were cranking on an episode or 2 a week could come out versus I'm just struggling to find time to get 1 out a month. So for me, that was really the hard part of I can show up on the mic, I can talk, we can do the episode, but I really needed other who's to do the hows of, how do we chop this up? How do we edit it? And how do we promote it?
Yeah. So Miriam, if I remember from our conversation before, works remotely from where you're at, right?
Yeah, she's in Nairobi, Kenya, actually.
right,
Yep,
yeah.
and she was helping someone else in the UK with the podcast,
Yeah.
and she was kind of working on setting up her own agency doing this piece. So I think you've got to really find somebody like that who loves this piece. Her thing was even her focus was let's she really wanted to focus on kind of the promotion of it, of, okay, we're putting it out on social media, we're writing the email marketing for it, we're, talking about it and getting it out there and letting the guests know that their episode is live. That's all great. But I said, I need someone to edit it, and I don't want to coordinate with anybody else. Like, I want a one-stop shop. Let's get you the tools you need. She didn't have video. So I should say we're on YouTube and we do the audio podcast.
Okay.
And the YouTube views are where most of them are. Of all the other podcast audio platforms combined, YouTube is probably 10x of those basically. So it's a much bigger hurdle to do video episodes because of all the editing and so on required. But it's really I think it's been worth it for us in my experience, for additional views, additional, basically people seeing us and getting exposed to it. So what we ended up doing was using a combination of Riverside and Descript.io. So basically the AI portions or the AI tools where, okay, we're not going to be using Premiere or what have you. We don't need to use these high-end video editing tools. It's probably overkill for what we're doing, but we need some way to just chop out little parts and do things. And so doing a basic version of that and getting her up to speed on that piece, that was huge. So it's sort of I'm of two minds about these things, where it's just like, hire people who already know how to do what you do. I mentioned Who Not How. That's a Dan Sullivan book, and I'm a big fan of Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach. And so I believe in Who Not How, but sometimes when you're small, you got to say, hey, can you help me with this too, until we get somebody to do that part. And in this case, it worked. We didn't need anything so sophisticated with the editing that we needed a dedicated video editor and then a promoter. I was like, let's just combine it all into one. Yeah. I could see how if you're bigger, you have more budget, whatever, you could make those separate jobs.
So were you always audio video? Did you start like that?
We did do that from the top, and I should say, we started on Zoom, and you can watch the very first episode with my client, Tim, from the Healthy Place. He's like a vitamin and supplement company, and it's nice and rough. One thing on YouTube or on Zoom is, I don't know if it's still in the case, but 720 pixels, 720p was the max, and just when we finally made that switch and I invested in Riverside, or said, okay, let's get a dedicated tool for this, quality jumped up a lot. Zoom is set up for video conferencing, real-time stuff where it's not recorded for all posterity. It's not for content creation. And doing Riverside was a big step up, and whatever your tool is. But the other thing that Riverside does is, if there's a little cut in the connection or someone's Wi-Fi or internet isn't good, you just kind of lose them, and that part gets cut out in Zoom. Riverside has this thing where it's recording locally asynchronously, and then it uploads it to the cloud. Yeah. And so even if you're like not quite hearing people during it, because sometimes I'm talking to people in other countries or what have you, the Riverside quality was much higher. So we did video from the beginning, and pretty soon it was clear that Zoom alone was not going to cut it.
Yeah. If that got you curious and you want to catch the full episode, be sure to subscribe to the show. We've got plenty more great conversations coming up.
Welcome back. So that was, what part was that with Eagan? Are we on number 3, number 2? I can't remember. Number 2. Okay. So Eagan there was talking about production, which has been the bane of my life. So
My life.
Well, of your life. Well, to be fair, yeah. It was the bane of my life, and then I got rid of it. Yes. Which was you're welcome. So I totally empathize with what Egan's saying. Like, I'm with him. I love to sit down, chat with people, talk with people, but all that other stuff, we used to say, didn't we, on one of the sponsorship slots, actually, all that other stuff, Pod Junction takes care of all the whole production side of things, because we were like, if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be the only person enjoying it. And so some people really get a kick out of it. Some people really, really enjoy the whole production process, and it's almost like they like both sides of it. They like to record and they like to produce. Yeah, that's not me, though. I'm with Eagan on this. I'm with Eagan. Where do you sit? Because you now do both.
The speaking and the finding guests is definitely more interesting
than production.
Than the production bit. Because I think production kind of becomes, you know, kind of run of the mill. You kind of get the same thing, different day, same thing.
Different day, same different day.
I just changed it a little bit.
Yeah. No, it very much can be, because when you find your groove and what the show's like, it just becomes about knocking them out, right? Yeah. It's just like, I'm just going to batch process this. Yeah. And interestingly, he mentioned tools like Riverside and Descript, and between them, they've made the whole process a lot easier than what it used to be.
Yeah.
Because I remember the days when we would record the audio version of the podcast, and you did that through a sound desk to an MP3 recorder. Yeah. And in fact, I've got an MP3, the original MP3 recorder. I'm just turning around. It's on the shelves behind me. It's part of our little studio decoration. So we'd record from the desk to the MP3 recorder. We would then take the MP3 recording off the card by putting it into the computer. You would import it into the computer. And then you would have to open a program like Adobe Audition, which, you know, talk about taking a hammer to a nut type thing. It's just, we need a sledgehammer to crack this hazelnut type thing. It was way more than what anybody needed. And it was so complicated to use. And you imported the tracks, and you would spend hours just, you know, farting about with sound waves and EQ, and you would do things like, we'll cut out that, you know, we'll cut those audio tracks to make the silence, to make it go quicker. And then we start to cut out all the ers and the ums. And it would take hours, and I mean hours, to edit a podcast. And one of the beautiful things about modern technology is you can just press a button and it's like, zip, there it is. And you're like, wow. So what before would take 5 or 6 hours now can be done in literally 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
We don't record to an MP3 recorder anymore. We record straight into the computer, although some people would say that actually is nuts, because what happens if the computer dies? You've lost the recording. I'm like, the one time in every 1,000 that happens, I'll deal with it, as opposed to having to figure. I'm just re-record, as opposed to having to figure out the whole MP3 recorder thing. So, yeah, I think production is very different now. Very, very different. But I still get why Ethan would not want to do it.
Eagan.
Because Eagan, sorry. Did I say Ethan?
Yes, you did.
You know what I was thinking of in my head? Mission Impossible. Don't know why. I don't know why. But there you go. So, yeah, I just think it's one of those things. I'm totally with him. Totally with him. So, Descript, Riverside. No, we use Descript. We don't use Riverside. No, we do use Riverside.
We do use Riverside, but we don't have Riverside and Descript talking.
Okay. Yeah. Why not?
Because we don't always use Riverside. Riverside is just, we usually use Ecamm, don't we?
That's true. So at the moment we're recording onto Ecamm, which is a piece of software for the Mac that started out as a live streaming piece of software. We used it in the early days when we were live streaming. Ecamm was sort of one of the few pieces of software that you could do that with. And now it is so good. We just record everything with it, even if we're not live streaming. Like at the moment, we're not live streaming. And it's great. It just records everything you need it to record, doesn't it? And so then our process is you then take the audio file. You take the audio and video files, because Ecamm records this separately. Yeah. And then you import those into Descript. But if you record on Riverside, you download the files and then port them into Descript.
I think you do. We haven't set it up. I mean, it's easy enough to do, but we just haven't done it because we don't use it enough.
You can just actually have them connect straight to each other,
so
can't
we'll just automatically upload to Descript.
Yeah, so then you don't even need to download them.
Yeah.
You can just have Riverside send the file straight to Descript. And in fact, Riverside, am I right in saying Riverside has their sort of own version of Descript? No. Descript now has their own version of Riverside. So they bought Squadcast. That's
it, yeah.
Is that right?
That is right.
So for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about now, Matt, we're just getting lost in all these names. So Squadcast was a podcasting platform, an online podcasting platform that people use for many years. And Descript, which is like a really intriguing video and audio editing piece of software. So Riverside helps you to record your podcast, as you guys were talking about in the clip, right? It records the episode locally on your machine. So if you have to do it in Chrome, and so what happens is Riverside connects you both together through like a Zoom type platform, it records the video and audio to each computer first. So if you're the host, it records it to your computer. If you're the guest, the video gets saved onto your computer. So you get the highest possible quality.
Yeah.
Plus, if the internet drops out, the problem we have with Ecamm is if we have a dial-in guest and the internet's a bit funny, sometimes we'll have episodes where the guest is a bit blurry because the internet speed isn't great. Whereas Riverside sort of figured out a way around this by recording both items locally and uploading them to the cloud as you sort of go along. And then it synchronizes all of that, which I think is really clever technology when it works. To be fair, when we used Riverside a couple of years ago, we found it was very glitchy.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of improvements since.
A lot of work has been done on Riverside
Yeah.
since. So it is definitely a lot better. So Riverside will help you record your podcast in a way that is really simple and really easy, especially if you want to do video. Descript then helps you do the production. It helps you edit. That's the best way to say it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, there are other pieces of software out there you can use, but Descript is fast becoming the mainstay, isn't it,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, and also Riverside creates clips for you as well.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, so, and actually thinking about it now, I wonder if we connected it to Descript, that might make creating those clips on Descript a lot easier too.
Okay.
So, yeah. I think
Very
we should
good.
figure that out.
We should definitely have a play. Well, you guys should definitely have a play with it.
Yeah, you stay out of it, Matt.
Yeah, I'm definitely staying out of it. But Riverside, we really like. We really do. We should probably get an affiliate link to Riverside and put it in the comments. But Riverside, we really like, and Descript, we really like. We do use both. We're not exclusively Riverside, nor are we exclusively Descript, because we still, I mean, again, it was mentioned in the clip that he doesn't use Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro X or so. Do you know what I mean? Those kind of pieces of software, which are just, again, a bit like using Adobe Audition to edit a podcast. There's a lot of stuff in those programs that you don't need just for a podcast, but a lot.
Yeah.
If you're going to invest time and money into it, then maybe you want to do multicam edits and all that sort of stuff. You can think about that.
That's what Eagan was saying, wasn't he? That to stay flexible.
Yeah.
So stay flexible with your tools, with your resource, and then upgrade as you go.
Yeah. Figure out what works best for you. CapCut is another video editing piece of software that everyone has started to use a lot, especially in podcasting. DaVinci Resolve is another one. Again, find out what works for you. Descript is really, the reason we started with Descript was because we had Estella working for us. Now, Estella was based in India. And she was lovely, but we didn't want to go through the pain barrier of trying to get Estella up and running on something like Final Cut Pro, which was what we were using internally at the time. And so we came across Descript, we tried it, and the whole way it does video editing is a little bit different because it does it on the basis of the text on the screen. It's a text-based video editor, which makes it remarkably simple to learn.
Very, very simple.
Yeah, really easy, really quick, quite intuitive type stuff. And so, yeah, if you're not using it, definitely check it out if you're wanting to do your own production. It's probably the one thing that I would say 9 out of 10 people that ask us for help with production that want to do it themselves would probably point them in that direction, I would have thought.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, Descript is really fascinating. And then what was the other one that I mentioned? Squadcast. So Squadcast was a bit like Riverside, but more audio only, like a podcast-based platform. That's now changed. Descript has sort of bought that. And so Descript and Squadcast also work well together. They're both trying to, I think over the next few months, next year or so, it'll become really interesting what happens with those two things. And whether Descript will push that much more. And even actually whether Riverside will then start to compete a bit more with Descript, whether they'll start to create their own editor. And you might find that these two platforms, actually, you only need one of them at some point. But at the moment, we use both. Yeah? And both are cool. Both are very, very cool. So, yeah. What are your top production tips?
Oh, wow.
Don't do it.
I think maybe what Eagan was saying in the clip, like having the right team, like people who are efficient and capable in doing what you're doing. And I think that really helps the production process. If you're a one-man band, it's a little bit more time consuming and you got to learn the ins and outs of all of that. But if you've got people to help you along the way, I think that makes life a lot easier. So my top tip is get a team.
Build a team.
Yeah, and whether that's I guess team of people or even having the right tools, the right software to help you.
Yeah.
I think that would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting because again, his producer's based in, did he say Nairobi?
Yeah.
And obviously he's not in well, I'd say obviously, I assume he's not in Nairobi. I think he's in the States somewhere.
He's in Wisconsin.
That's right, Madison, isn't it? Madison, Wisconsin, he is in. And that's the beauty of the internet now, is actually you can get help from all over the place. So you could look at places like Fiverr to try and, if you're going to try and outsource help. We used to, with Podjunction, we were just like, when we first started out, we were like, well, we could just do production for the people. And we can do that. You know, if you want a production company, more than happy to talk to you. We're definitely not going to be the cheapest because, we're not in Nairobi and we're a team of people. We're an agency. But we sort of focus more on getting you up and running so you can do it yourself and help build your own team, as opposed to necessarily try and do production for you. Although that said, we obviously do production for a number of people. But I think production's one of those things that I think it scares a lot of folk. I think it's probably the one reason why people don't do podcasting. Is
I
because
think
they don't
there's
get
a lot
production.
more moving parts with production, whereas the hosting is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's
It is what you
smile,
see,
right?
yeah. Whereas with production, there can be quite a few things that need to happen
Yeah.
that are dependent on each other, that kind of stuff. So it gets more complicated.
It does. And I wonder how much that turns people off. Yeah. That sort of fear of it. But when you started in podcast production, it's not like you came from an audio engineering background.
No, I was just going to say that. You don't really, you can learn everything you need to know on the job. You don't have to have any kind of qualifications. I sure didn't. Matt still can't believe I work for a tech company.
No word of a lie. We were doing the sound test at the beginning. So you can't see it on the camera, but to the left of us, we have the DLZ, or I think it's called the DLZ because it's probably an American company, Mackie DLZ Creator Sound Desk. And in the other studio, we use the Rode Procaster. But all of that said, there's a button on there which does this automatic level setting. And because different people use the studio, we just come in, set the levels automatically, and away you go. And so Sadaf was like, "Oh, are we going to do the level thing?" So I'm like, "Yes." And she's just chatting away. And the desk, I'm just looking at the desk. I'm not looking at Sadaf. I'm looking at the desk. And it's saying, "Well, nothing's detected." I'm like, I'm pressing it again. And she's still chatting away. And then eventually you say to me, go on, tell everyone what you said to me.
I'm going to need this mic, aren't I?
So she was just chatting away. The microphone was not even in front of her. And I wasn't looking at her to figure this out. I was like, why is the desk not working? Just assuming, obviously, illogically, that the microphone would be, in fact, in front of you. So, yeah, we
Yeah, so the point is, anyone can do production.
It turns out anyone can do podcast hosting as well.
Yeah.
You don't even need a microphone. That's brilliant. So, yeah, we're a tech company. I just wonder how many people tune in for the weekly story.
I don't know. I'd love to know, though.
What's gone on this week that's going to cause us to laugh? But yeah. But you're right. I think you can learn on the job. I mean, bringing it back to production. I think actually you probably should. So if you're thinking, should I start a podcast, or you're fairly new in the podcast, I actually think there's a lot to be said for, unless, you're a hyper busy exec, and it makes financial sense to outsource it. But even then, I still think it's good to understand the production process and what goes on. So I don't do production, but I understand it. Mind you, I used to I started out doing production. I started out doing the Adobe Audition stuff. I think it was me that probably figured out in the early days how to use Descript, just playing around with things. Not because I need to control everything, but just it's good to understand what other people have to go through. So when I'm recording a podcast, there are things that I now know that will make it easier for production.
Yeah.
So when I'm recording, it's going to make stuff a lot easier. Yeah. Just simple things like, if anything, we like to record podcasts like this, where it's just, we record this in one take. So we play the intro video, we sit down, we do the intro, we play the interview clip, we sit and listen to the clip, then we chat. We're in one place, and this whole thing is recorded in one take. But if something goes wrong, just having a notebook in front of you, jotting down the time on the screen. So it's now telling me we've been recording for 24 minutes and 52 seconds. So if something went wrong now, I can just jot down 24:52 and just write a brief note so that the production guys can easily spot that, right? Rather than them having to listen through intently to every detail to try and figure out if there was a mistake. So just simple things like that make a big difference. You know, just jotting notes and of timing issues. And what other things really help? You can answer this question anytime today. Or do I need to jot down 25 minutes, 20 seconds? Awkward pause by Sadaf needs to be trimmed out.
I was trying to remember the rest of the question. What were we talking about?
Did you just zone out?
A little bit.
Wow.
So what was it? What else?
Tips. What tips?
Oh, okay.
So when you're hosting a podcast, how can the host make it easier for the production team?
Okay, I'm with you now.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. The timestamp stuff is good. I like that because when you've done that for us in the past, it's made a huge difference.
There's even a button, actually. It's not set up on this desk here, but with Ecamm, there's a button where you can add markers.
Yeah.
And actually, this is something that Steve Bartlett does, Diary of the CEO. So when he's talking, if he's into a conversation that he thinks is actually quite interesting, or he's thinking, actually, this will be a good promotional clip or something, he just has a button. We use the Stream Deck. I don't know what he uses. I think he just uses a trackpad underneath his desk. But you just press the button and it sets a digital marker on the file. And so again, production team can know, well, Matt as a host thought this would be a really interesting clip to use on social media. So you can set markers, which I think is, I always forget to do it, but you can do it. That's quite a useful thing.
Yeah, I think going back to your question, when you're in production and you've got quite a few different podcasts that you're putting out for episodes that you're putting out for different podcasts, this is something that we have done and do, is that we get the host to give us their takeaways.
Yeah.
Say what stood out to them, so then we can, and it depends on how you do your podcast, but how we do it is we create social media reels and content to put on social media. So it's helpful for us to know what the host thinks is really good to go out there. Yeah,
to go out on social media. So just jotting down your takeaways from the conversation. Which I would always recommend when you're hosting, you do that straight away, either as you're going along or immediately after the podcast, because within 20 minutes you'll have forgotten the conversation. So certainly the details of it. So help out your production team by jotting that stuff down as soon as the podcast finishes, whilst it's fresh in your memory. And it all becomes really helpful, because there's been times like I've seen you send emails out to like Anna, who hasn't put in a 3 takeaways. And then I'll be sitting there going, "Oh, Christmas! I can't remember what they were." Now I've got to scrub through the transcripts, try and figure out what it was. That's another good top tip. That actually works like I say, that also works with the digital markers. You can sometimes, depending on the software you're using to record, you can add digital markers, which really, really help. So whatever you can do to help the production team, definitely do it. You want them to be your friends, because if they're not your friends, well, they'll make you sound like Donald Duck or something, you know. It's probably not going to be helpful. No. There'll be an e-commerce podcast episode. Matt sort of tales like this, is that? And so that's because my voice has been altered. But no, anything else?
No.
Is that it?
That's it.
Very good. So there was a conversation about production. I enjoyed that. Actually, we don't not often talk about production.
No, we don't.
The stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So yes, in fact, what's our process is, just to give you a heads up on what our process is, we may have mentioned this before, but we record the podcast. We then upload the video files to Dropbox. We fill out what we call the AMP document. So just things like the takeaways and stuff like that. That gets all sent off to production. Tanya and you guys import it into Descript. You cut the video up, you create the reels, you export the audio, with compressors and all kinds of sound filters on there. So then that goes off to the podcast platform with the show notes. The reels get uploaded to social media, and the video gets uploaded to YouTube.
That's right.
And that's the process.
And that's it.
That's it.
That is it. Simple.
Simple as, he says.
Takes no time at all.
So what's next week? What are we talking about next week?
We've got Eagan Heath back again. And it's a surprise. I can't remember. It's going to be a surprise for all of us.
Oh, it's the attention to detail. So not only do you zone out, but it's the attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And here we are saying, come use Podjunction and you'll be there.
Yes.
Let me produce
I'll be
your
on
podcast.
top of my game then.
Fortunately, we've got a bigger team than Sadaf. So, yes. Any questions, let us know. But yeah, I've enjoyed that one. It's good to go down the production memory lane. So do come join us next week. Obviously, make sure you like and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from. But yeah, anything else from you? No. Awesome. Have a great week, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode at Pod Junction. If you've enjoyed the insights from this episode and want to hear the full conversation with today's special guest, don't forget to visit podjunction.com, where you'll find more information about how you can join Pod Junction cohort. Whether you listened while on the go or in a quiet moment, thank you for letting us be a part of your day. Remember, every episode is a chance to gain insights and to transform your business with podcasting. So keep on tuning in, keep on learning, and until next time, happy podcasting.